These are my 5 tips for preparing before a mix. Tip number 1. Mix on a separate day from recording and editing. Your biggest assets when mixing are your ears and your perspective. When you are busy recording and editing, you are constantly using your ears during this process and thus wearing them out. The song no longer feels fresh and you lose your perspective on the song. So why is this a problem? The human body is fascinating in that it has built-in mechanisms that protect it from danger. In the case of your ears, when we listen to loud levels of sound consistently, a built-in compressor is activated in your ears, and all sounds that you hear thereafter are suppressed and compromised. If you mix when your ears are fatigued, you will be making decisions about EQ and compression incorrectly, as your ears will be deceiving you. You might end up adding too much top end because your ears naturally suppress the high frequencies. This will result in a harsh sounding mix. You might gain the levels up higher due to the sound being suppressed in your ears. In a professional studio, the main mixing engineer will usually have an assistant, and the assistant will take care of editing the tracks, making sure that the timing is correct and choosing the correct comps and tuning vocals. And once the tracks are synced and sounding good and ready for mixing, this is when the mixing engineer will come in with a fresh set of ears and mix the song. Now if you're watching this video, I'm sure you do not have an assistant. Therefore my tip for you is to simply sort out all your tracks and edit what needs to be edited, and then mix on a separate day with a fresh set of ears. And just a tip on perspective, I learnt this tip from Chris Lord Algie. He usually tries to mix a song quickly on the first go within an hour. His reason for doing this is that when he hears a song fresh, his mind has a certain perspective of how the song should sound. If you take too long, you might lose focus on that perspective, and then you might have too many ways to go and too many choices to make. This will not help you get the mix completed. So mix on a separate day and try to keep your mixing session as short as possible. Tip number 2. Listen to the artist's style or genre of music. Whether you are mixing for an artist or for yourself, your song will no doubt linger towards a certain genre. Each genre demands its own bag of tools and tricks at the mixing desk. Also, what might have been a trend in a certain genre a few years ago might be completely different now. So listen to other music in that genre and get acquainted with the style. For example, what style of compression is being used? Is it a lot of compression? Is it mild compression? Is the EQ range more on the brighter end or on the lower end? Or is it a balanced spectrum? Do they make use of a lot of delays or reverb? Without this kind of information, your mixing will be too random and might not fit in a certain genre. For example, adding too much of autotune to a country vocal would be a complete mismatch. One of them, hallelujah, one of them. I'm so glad that I can say I'm one of them. That leads me to my third point. Have at least one reference track ready to pull up in your mix session. For the same reasons mentioned in the previous tip, use a reference track so that you do not have to mix blindly. Pull up a track similar to the instrumentation in your track and constantly reference back to it while mixing. The idea here is not to copy the reference sound, but rather use it as a reference guide to make sure that you are not going completely out of what is commercially acceptable. Yes, music is an art and is different, but if your track is not at least in the ballpark of what is commercially acceptable, it ain't gonna sound much good. So hey, if you're getting value so far in this, hit the like button, drop a comment down below and let us know what tips you are using to prepare for a mix. And hey, if you're not subscribed, please consider doing so. Tip number 4. Make sure you have already learned how your DAW and your plugins work. Know the ins and outs of the controls of a compressor and an EQ and the other tools in your DAW so that you don't waste time in the mix thumb sucking and guessing. If you know how the controls of EQ and compression work, you will use it wisely for a specific task and not just randomly. Just like a skilled carpenter that knows in advance what the purpose of each tool is and what to use it for, this will make your mixes stand out. The last tip for today is to use earplugs an hour before mixing. If you remember what we talked about in tip number 1, we need to protect our hearing. Now, apart from just mixing on a separate day, our ears are bombarded with sounds the whole day, whether it's music, the loud noise of a car on the road, or trains or planes, etc. Our ears do not have a break. So I learned this tip from Chris Lipe. Use a set of earplugs 1 hour before you mix. This will dampen out the sound from your surroundings, thus giving your ears a much needed break. And when you're ready to mix, your ears will be much fresher and ready to make accurate mixing choices. So I hope that's been helpful today and that you prepare well for your mixes. If you're not subscribed, please consider doing so and hit the bell to be notified of all my upcoming videos. You should see my previous videos pop up on the screen now, and you can click them to watch other videos on mixing techniques. See you in the next video.